Hi, everybody. We're beginning now with the text of Esoteric Astrology. The Esoteric Astrology Adventure number 1 looked at the chart that we would be using for this process. It has the Sun in Aries. It has Leo on the ascendant. It has the Moon in Sagittarius. And during the first description, the first little webinar, I described some of this chart and the spontaneity that will be required as we begin reading through the book, taking in, as we do so, a number of different aspects of occultism. In other words, it's impossible simply to talk about astrology. This is esoteric astrology, and we have to talk about the field of the ageless wisdom in order to do so. So, let us simply begin. Chapter 1, the Zodiac and the Rays. Now, what I'll do is I'll read a paragraph and then make some comments on it. I have some comments already prepared, and I will elaborate upon them a little later in the book. We will simply improvise as we go, and hopefully ideas will enter our minds which will clarify the science of esoteric astrology as much as we can do so at this present time. We cannot do so entirely, and after 2025, or from 2025 and onwards, the Tibetan has said that he will be offering new material in this science, because the series of treatises that he is writing for us and for humanity in general is not complete, and the third installment is on its way. Okay, so let us simply begin. We will have question and answer sessions on another discussion forum, another webinar, after some of the initial work is completed. Okay. What I have to say first on this subject is entirely of a preliminary nature. I seek to lay the ground for a somewhat new approach, a far more esoteric approach to the science of astrology. Certain things I may say will probably be regarded by the academic and uninspired astrologer as revolutionary, as erroneous, as improbable or unprovable. As yet, however, astrology has not really proved itself to the world of thought and science, in spite of many definitely demonstrable successes. I would ask all of you, therefore, who read and study this section of a treatise on the 7 rays, to bear in mind the above comments and to preserve a willingness to consider hypotheses and to make an effort to weigh a theory or suggestion and to test out conclusions over the course of a few years. Well, we've had 80 years to do this, although the book was actually not released until 1951, so more like 60 years. If you can do this, there may come to you an awakening of the intuition, which will translate modern astrology into something of real moment and significance to the world. It is intuitional astrology which must eventually supersede what is today called astrology, thus bringing about a return to the knowledge of that ancient science which, related the constellations and our solar system, drew attention to the nature of the zodiac, and informed humanity as to the basic interrelations which govern and control the phenomenal and subjective worlds. So that will be enough for us to begin with. The Tibetan is offering us a new astrology, as he says, a far more esoteric approach. If it's an esoteric approach, it's going to involve the higher aspects of the human being, his soul nature on the higher mental plane, his spiritual triad we call Atma Buddhi Manas, spiritual will, spiritual love, spiritual mind, and finally even the monad. The Tibetan even has space in his astrology for the monad, or the spirit in man. We have to become inspired. It's not enough to have a prosaic attitude towards astrology and think we can simply learn it with our concrete minds. It requires the use of the Antakarana. It requires soul-infused practitioners. The influence of the spiritual triad is the influence of that which is transpersonal, or really even trans-individual in the life of the human being. And if we build that rainbow bridge, that bridge of light into the higher worlds, then the influence of the spiritual triad will enter, and we can grasp the new astrology, which of course does not excuse us from learning the nuts and bolts of this newer approach. Many people believe in astrology, and some very distinguished individuals have practiced it. Sir Isaac Newton was a practitioner of astrology, a student of astrology. Johannes Kepler, a great scientist, also earned his living by practicing astrology. We are told also that Einstein had books related to this subject and to the secret doctrine on his desk. Of course, you know, people say all kinds of things about what was on Einstein's desk. But I did see an image of his handprint. Apparently, he gave his handprint to the famous palmist Chiero. I'm not sure what the man's full name was, but he was known by the name Chiero, C-H-I-E-R-O. And there was Einstein's free-floating headline in a print of his palm. Very interesting. So we believe in astrology, many of us. We've seen it work, but there are so many intelligent people who think that it's just bunk. It was expelled from the universities some centuries ago and has never quite made its way back in, but now it's beginning to do so. And it is our task to help the thinkers of the race accept astrology. This we must do by proven successes in interpretation, not simply the prediction of events, but its astrological, or rather psychological application, clarifying the psychology of individuals. If not, it will be considered simply a pseudoscience as it is today, but those days are fast ending. I would say that in another century or two, and certainly by the time 700 or 800 years has passed, and when Mercury becomes the decanate ruler of Aquarius, which it will rule for 720 years approximately, then certainly astrology will be in its proper place, this greatest and oldest of all the sciences, and it is our task to bring it to that position if we can. The DK is asking us for an empirical approach, obviously one that uses the fifth ray of concrete knowledge and science. Aquarius is coming in, and by the end of the 21st century, the Piscean influence will be completely removed. The fifth ray of Aquarius will be powerfully beginning to manifest. So we will have the computing power and the undreamt of means of verifying the astrological science. He doesn't want us to just believe. Many people believe in astrology. He wants us to know that it actually works, because we have verified it in our own lives and in the lives of others. So he calls for the statistical methods and careful experimentation and testing. you can see that DK is sounding the note of reasonableness from the very outset. We need what's called buddhi manas. It's the intuition joined to manas, and thus the mind will be inspired. There are so many variables in astrology, it's impossible to see what is relevant to any human being or any situation without the intuition being active. So we must find a way to find the salient features out of 10,000 variables or more, and only our intuition can help us zero in on what applies specifically to the individual or to the group or to the nation that is under our consideration. Intuition, it's not vague thing at all. It's razor sharp. It's infallible. It is straight knowledge, as Master Morya calls it, straight knowledge. So true reason and intuition do not contradict each other, and there are many people who think it does. We can have both operating, and that's what we need to cultivate, especially as students of esotericism. Cultivating of the intuition is extremely important. The intuition will reveal the grand design, the great archetypal patterns on the monadic and logoic planes of which astrology is an intrinsic part. So astrology will be full of error without the intuition. When we begin to study astrology, we are seeking what DK calls basic interrelations. Sometimes I think the science of relations is the greatest science of all, of which astrology and numerology and all the rest of our occult sciences are simply a part. The basic interrelations between constellations and the zodiac and our planet and so forth, it may be here suggested that constellations and the zodiac are not identical. We have the zodiac of signs, and we do have the zodiacal constellations, but the constellations are the great lives themselves, the great lords who are so powerful in every respect that they need a collection of solar gods or solar logoi to express through. Now, if you think about our great God, the solar logos, he needs only one star in a solar system to express his nature, but a lord of a constellation needs a number of solar logoi and their planets, if they have them, through which to express. The zodiac of signs is the imaginary path of the sun around the earth. It's a seeming, it's an illusion, and yet there are divisions to this zodiacal circle, and there are Davic components to the 12 divisions, and these Davic or angelic lesser lives are able to attract specific zodiacal constellational energy. Like there may be a band in the zodiac of 30 degrees that is particularly attuned to the constellation Aries, and the succeeding band attuned to the lord of the constellation Taurus, and so forth and so forth. So the zodiac of signs is our planet's method of receiving and adapting constellational energy to the needs of our planet. You know, so many scientific types say, well, you astrologers, you're so foolish, you don't even know that the sun is not in the sign you say it is. It's not against the starry system you say it is when you say it's in a certain sign. But we do know that, and we know that the signs and the constellations are out of phase and will become even more out of phase in the next 23,000 years. But that will not stop the particular section of the zodiac which is attuned to that constellation from receiving the energy of that constellation, specializing it, adapting it, and transmitting it to the earth. So we are interested in two kinds of worlds, the phenomenal world, the subjective world. We have to bring them together